Hello, everybody. Today is October 28th, and we're doing Robot and Nonsense, and it is spooky weekend. This is your reminder in case you need to get roses or something for your undead loved ones.
If you are that kind of person, this is your reminder to go buy candy, prep your house. If you're this kind of person, it's your reminder to turn off your porch light.
Don't let them know that you're there. I never get trick-or-treaters. I mean, we live in the middle of nowhere now, but even when we lived in a real neighborhood, we never got trick-or-treaters.
Well, you lived in like college-style housing, right? The kids probably knew that.
There were families there, though, like in some of the apartments, but they never trick-or-treated in that area.
It seems like most trick-or-treaters now, because they usually drive to a certain location, they know that the smart move is just go to the rich neighborhood.
That's what we used to do when I was a kid. Or you go to the thing, they have like trunk or treat downtown or something.
Right.
Full-size Snickers bars. Who does that?
Yeah, the rich folks.
I don't think that should be allowed. I think it should be like gerrymandering, right? You should have to trick-or-treat where you live.
In your area.
So can I see your ID? Say, all right.
I don't have an ID. I'm 10.
Let me see your ear tag. We can't let you be getting over.
Did your parents submit a blood sample last week? Great, I can just look you up by your DNA.
Oh.
Give me your school shooting kit. Let me double check it against the database. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with space. But first, let's talk about some space. And here's a headline that we just keep seeing over and over. I'm totally numb to it, as I imagine everybody else is. But it's still impressive.
SpaceX launches 54 Starlink.
Yeah, they screwed that up.
They did, yeah.
54 more Starlink satellites and lands a rocket in its 100th mission from Florida pad.
Elizabeth Howell.
This was the 7th time this was reused also, which is very impressive.
She might not be the editor for space.com. She might just be the writer. I
was also reading, did we have the story about Spaceship One? I can't remember if I read that for the news or if I just read that.
I think it was in the article.
I had no idea it was so much cheaper than the SLS. The SLS that I guess NASA and the others are working on. It's only going to cost $70,000 a ton to get stuff into space once Starship One is ready. Actually, it's even cheaper than that.
Actually, it might have been in this article because they were juxtaposing like the historic cost and slow movement versus the post-Musk era, which is just light speed at this point.
Since the crew's Dragon debut, SpaceX has flown more astronauts than anybody. Thank you for an incredible rise up to orbit and an incredible ride home.
It'd been funny if they would have given them more of like an Uber style review.
The robot did not speak to me the entire time. 10 out of 10.
No bottled water available.
Yeah. There was some tourism pamphlets in there. It was nice.
It was only an iPhone style charging cable. What kind of... It's like, no.
And over in Europe, they are also going to launch some satellites, and this is going to be a unique satellite, although I imagine that certain governments already have these.
Europe plans to launch a quantum encryption satellite for ultra-secure communications in 2024. Why quantum? Well, if it's eavesdropped on, it's going to mess with the system, and so you'll know that it's been interacted with because of the spooky nature of quantum mechanics.
Also, Eagle One? What? We are Eagle. You don't get to be Eagle.
At best, you're Ocelot. Babu.
Now, I talked about this last week, but I went ahead and threw this in because we got some new information here about a beautiful new thing that's happening. And I can only assume that this is somehow related to Krista because we all know that all black holes ultimately want her dead.
A black hole is releasing some strange burps, baffling scientists.
If you're thinking this is a repeat from last Friday, it is. But there's more information here because the article from last week was not very good. The black hole is not burping up matter. What's happening is a star collapsed around the black hole, and then after more time than scientists predicted should have passed, matter was being ejected from very near the black hole, which means that the matter was a slingshot across the black hole.
Yeah, so it didn't actually go across the event horizon is what they said. I think.
2 years.
Yeah, but that took longer than the mathematical models predicted, so that's pretty exciting.
Imagine having a meal and then 2 years later you vomit.
Well, no, it didn't. The black hole didn't eat it. It was just 2 years later you find out there was a whole other leg of turkey that you missed.
Oh, or you're saying that eating an algae breaks down at some point? Imagine that. Moving on to some robots, Waymo is looking for a new market, and with the traffic here, I bet that this will be a challenging market.
Waymo says it plans to launch its self-driving service in Los Angeles. I almost wanted to go back and get the stories from the last couple of weeks about Waymo and the other self-driving cars doing bad things in other California cities, but
San Francisco, where they would just sit there.
Yeah. Which, I mean, again, if the traffic is as bad in LA as I've heard it is, maybe them just sitting there is not so bad.
Sometimes they're sitting in traffic, sometimes they're sitting because they want to, but they're always sitting. And FedEx, now we saw again last week. Which company abandoned their robot last week?
Amazon, I thought.
Oh, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Amazon. And now FedEx.
FedEx has abandoned its last mile delivery robot program.
The TLDR here is that it's really expensive, actually, to have this robot do it. It's much cheaper to just have a human do it.
This robot was much more complex. I bet these are way more expensive.
Yeah.
But no, they couldn't do it. Turns out that human beings are still cheaper.
Well, there's enough of them.
There's not a lot of chips. There's a lot of people.
Do you have any idea the kind of engineering resource it takes to make a 5 nanometer chip versus, people contain a factory. Some people contain a factory for producing more people.
And we learned that, was it last year, or the year before, time compression, who knows, but Zillow decided to use AI to decide what houses to buy. And the AI basically told them to just buy everything. That did not go well. Eventually, they got hit real hard by that. And now, I hope the same thing happens to these people.
Rent going up, one company's algorithm could be why. That was actually really funny around here, the Zillow thing. There were a lot of people that moved here because of the whole work from home thing. And so like the Zestimate was like, that house is worth $500,000. And everybody around here was laughing, being like, that house is
That's not worth that.
That's worth like maybe $150K. And then those people would call on sight unseen and make a lowball offer like, I'll give you $450K for it. And the people here were like, oh, okay, sounds good. And that actually happened here kind of a lot. So this algorithm is really stupid.
Well, this one's just based on rentals. And it's one of the interviews they had in the article was like, one of the landlords was saying, well, normally we wouldn't do like a double-digit increase like this in 1 year, but I mean, the algorithm says it's okay, so I guess we'll do it.
Also, they're constantly lamenting idiots who will refuse to raise the price and thus drag down everybody else's price because it's an alternative to the high price.
But what happens when you just can't afford basic things and you just go insane?
Like a living space.
Then you turn it into an Airbnb.
Yeah.
There are lots of Airbnb apocalypse stories too that we didn't include, where people that ran Airbnbs are saying, people aren't traveling anymore. Like, yeah.
Oh, some people aren't traveling, but also with Airbnb, they have such high cleaning fees. Like I went on vacation with my mom recently and I was like, let me look at Airbnb before we get a hotel. And she was like, okay. And Airbnb was like double or triple the price.
We also had that article about how, outside of Airbnb's agreement, you would get there and there'd be a whiteboard with a chores list.
Yeah.
Like, well, if you don't do this, we're going to charge you the cleaning fee. And then you
get hit with it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just not worth it.
It's dumb. Don't travel. Don't do that kind of stuff. Just stay at home, hoard your money, and hoard food. And if you can, power.
And get a sleeping bag because you may need it.
And this is just tangentially related to security, but it's interesting that, we need security so much for machine learning because our current operating systems are Swiss cheese that we just invent a new one.
Google announces KataOS, a security-focused OS leveraging Rust and SEL4 microkernel. So there's a lot of hopium in this article, but it's a new microkernel that is mathematically provably secure. But tell me that you are a software person and you've never worked on hardware without telling me that you're a software person that's never worked on hardware.
Over in China, people are perhaps reacting to the lockdowns in bizarre ways. Maybe, they were like, well, I don't know why people would do this. I might do this if you locked me in my home for a month. Like, let's just get outside. Let's just try to see the sun for a minute.
China's younger generation is taking robot dogs out for walks, a growing trend.
I was just thinking people wanted to have dogs and they couldn't afford like the food and stuff for them, so this is why they were doing it. But I didn't think about it in that extra dystopian way.
This isn't anything new though. Remember Aibo, the Sony robot
Yeah,
dog?
there's been a few of those things here.
A lot of people really love their Aibos. There's a whole cottage industry keeping the old Aibos alive. So this isn't really anything surprising.
Sadly, the Ibos do not love them back.
Yeah, did you notice the article had like subheadline made sure to mention that? It was like the robot dogs can't love you, and it's like it's kind of dark. Why do you have to say it like that?
I don't know that my cats love me.
Yeah,
I mean, they show me affection, but I think it's just because I feed them.
There'll be South Korean company that builds the first robot dog that is indistinguishable from organic love. Like, look, the software behaves exactly the same way.
Well, Oakland, the police department in Oakland are looking to get a new addition to their, crisis armory, I suppose you would say. And a lot of people were like, okay, maybe we give you that, but we need to put some safeguards on that. And they were like, nah, we don't like the safeguards. We would like to use this however we want.
Oakland cops hope to arm robots with lethal shotguns.
those dogs aren't going to shoot themselves.
So the whole idea here is you got a robot. It's like a bomb robot. It's got a shotgun, obviously, and there's like a concussive round with no lead in it that they can use as an anti-bomb thing. So basically it just gets point blank and shoots the bomb with concussive force to try to trigger it or blow it up or disable it or whatever. So they're like, okay, well, all right, we understand that, but would you pledge to never put like an actual buckshot or a slug into that? And they're like, no. What if there's an active shooter?
We can't be expected to go in and deal with that. Let's just send in the very slow robot.
They have already done that. If you remember, there was a shooter who they took out with C4 on a robot.
Yes.
It worked, but should we have done that?
The Rubicon has been crossed.
It's a difficult question. And this is pretty nostalgic for us because we definitely grew up during this time. And I collected so many CD-ROMs. I actually threw some away during the last move. I had like those giant spindles and I was like, I should keep these. And I was like, what am I thinking?
What do I need these for? Someone's
No.
going to have to deal with this when I'm dead.
And now, turns out that was a good move because I could just go and make another copy if I want.
Lost Something searched through 91.7 million files from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Discmaster lets you sift through 11 terabytes of CD-ROM and floppy archives.
And before they become NFTs.
Including 90s interface.
Oh, yeah.
It's so nice.
I bet it's a table layout.
Pictures of Santa Claus from the 90s.
Do they have the under construction GIF?
I mean, when CD-ROMs were so cheap to make, it was, here's the ultimate Santa Claus clip art collection, and it was literally 600 megabytes
Yeah.
of Santa Claus clip art.
And probably, like half of them were copyright,
Yeah.
but no one cared back in those days.
Yeah. Well, now you can use all that to train the next great AI.
Now, here's the engagement challenge. How many of you are still, let's say on a quarterly basis, breaking out that flamethrower? I bet there's not very many of you who still use the flamethrower. I bet you regret that $500.
The Elon Musk flamethrower is what
And
you're talking
I
about.
bet you'd regret this too.
Elon Musk is now selling perfume that smells like burning hair.
I assume we're in the nonsense section now.
Probably, yes.
I did not see this story. I don't always read the nonsense section because I kind of like being surprised
We
by
need,
the bizarreness.
we need the level 1 trophy wall that has the flamethrower and the portal gun and maybe some other video game guns on the wall.
This is another one of those things where it was just a Twitter thread, and much like the flamethrower, and he was like, "Oh, I should do that," and then he does, and people buy it because they're idiots.
What do you even do with that?
You tweet about it when you get it, and then you, I don't know, display it maybe.
You brag to your friends. You got to a bar. Guess what I bought?
And they say, "I hope it was a personality."
Maybe you could rent out boring machines to bore out a basement. I'd love to have an extra sub basement. That'd
They
be
don't,
cool.
aren't they like the size of a building?
Yeah.
You don't have that much land. This is terrifying. This is one of those situations like, why are we doing this? I suppose there's some gains to be made, but it just seems wrong.
Human neurons implanted in a rodent's brain lead a rat to water and make it drink.
So yeah, we're basically taking some human brain cells. What do they call it? A mini brain or organoid?
It's like the Pong story last week. I felt a little weird about that too.
But even further along, because
Yeah.
you're actually putting this in a living creature and it adapts into its own brain.
Yeah.
I ain't like that.
I thought this was part of just seeing if they could grow the tissue so that, you know, you could graft some artificial brain tissue on it. Somebody has a brain injury, and then it's like, look, fresh neurons.
But then they also figured out how to control it
Yeah.
with blue lasers, apparently. And Krista, according to LA Times by way of MSN, The Rings of Power is a blockbuster hit.
That's what they're saying. I don't know that I feel the same way. Amazon's The Rings of Power is a bona fide hit. Why doesn't it feel like it?
Because it's not.
It's really bizarre how the conversation in a lot of the like Lord of the Rings fandom areas that I frequent, like it just dropped off a cliff as soon as the show was over. No one is still theorizing about it. No one is talking about how they're excited for season 2. It's just
So they mentioned some kind of rating, that what they described as the water cooler rating, which is, and it's hard to measure, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, how much are people talking about? So it turns out with Stranger Things and what was the Korean one?
oh
Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Game. Yeah.
And House of the Dragon, massive.
Right.
Massive.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people talking about House of the Dragon.
Water cooler rating. Ring of Power, despite the ratings, no water cooler.
Yeah.
I mean, some, but comparatively, I think it was like good rather than exceptional.
Yeah, like I said, you know, most people who I talk to who are fans of the books are not happy with it. But even casual fans, I think, I haven't heard anyone really talking about it.
It's kind of like processor launches. It's like, you know, Intel and AMD have both launched their new things. They're both really fast, but everybody is sort of looking at things and saying, you know, the world's probably going to collapse. It doesn't matter. What's going on with hot tea?
Hot yeah.
It's like, let's think about other things. It's like, oh,
But the processor stuff is just pure marketing.
yeah.
People don't want that.
People want the joy of the, you know, the magic of technology, and slowly it's being ground away.
Well, I think
But
part of that too is that it's just so slow and incremental now. Like it's not a big jump most of the time.
It's too incestuous with the marketing. That's what turns me off to it. And apparently, as we are sitting in our homes preparing to freeze, we are all very anxious and suffering mentally, and that all the youth are so messed up that now we're out of an important drug.
The FDA has officially declared a shortage of Adderall.
I think there's quite a few drugs that are on the shortage list right now.
I wonder if we'll be able to quantify this in the GDP. It's like this blip in the GDP was when the Adderall shortage hit.
Adderall's not really for, it's not really for anxiety, it's for ADHD, right?
ADHD.
Yeah.
I mean, they prescribe it for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but mostly ADHD. Yeah. And they said that the numbers of kids being diagnosed with that was skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Modern kids who just,
Well, I had there's a guy that I knew that, I don't know if this is true or not, but his explanation for that sort of made sense. Is when you go to work for somewhere like Amazon, even if you didn't have ADHD, when you're not in that warehouse, in like anything other than the warehouse, what you're doing is so focused and so narrow in scope because there's so many people working on stuff that it gets kind of boring. Like, no, your brain is not really set up to do that. But this kind of a drug is really good because you can now just laser focus on something for 8 hours and it's fine. And so people will ask their doctors, like, I need more of that because otherwise I'm slowly going insane.
Which is sort of sad, right? Like the reality we've built is so terrible that the only way I can cope with it is,
imagine if Henry Ford would have had that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He wouldn't have had to let his employees get enough money to buy cars, and then might never have worked.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is just such a terrible idea. I can't help but think of all of the unintended consequences of government that have happened in the past. This seems like a really, really risky one to do in terms of unintended consequences.
White House is pushing ahead a research thing to cool Earth by reflecting back sunlight.
Sunlight does so much for us.
Yeah, I don't. Also, isn't it more the problem of just like we're creating too much heat here? Like,
I'm pretty sure The Simpsons already did this too. Remember when Mr. Burns was going to blot out the sun?
Highlander too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Highlander 2. Yeah.
I thought they were gonna blot out the sun with ads, right? That was the original idea.
Well, you know, if they build some kind of dome, they're going to put ads on the underside of it. Right? I
Hate
think
this
that
reality.
one of the plans is to seed the clouds to make them thicker. One of them is just to suspend stuff in the upper atmosphere, and one of them is to deal with other clouds to make them thinner. I don't know how that one works, but
Yeah, I don't see how making a thicker atmosphere would make it better for us when we're producing so much CO2 that it's getting warm.
the little particles will reflect back individual pieces of sun, and then that overall lowers it quite a bit. Actually, I think the science is probably fairly solid in terms of will it make everything colder? Probably, but will there be horrible cancers when that stuff
who
falls out of
knows?
the
Yeah.
sky?
Ugh.
Plus, they're talking about doing that one globally, and like, it would stay in the atmosphere and the Earth would spin under it, right? Or would it spin with the Earth?
Well, the atmosphere spins with the Earth at a different speed, hence cloud movement.
But would those particles stay like a cloud would?
I mean, it's all theoretical
I think
right
the
now.
atmosphere
Yeah.
will probably drag them along.
Who would answer that for us? Astronomers?
Yeah.
Atmosphere
Probably
scientists?
meteorologists.
The only thing that stays put is a geosynchronous satellite, which is way, way past the end of the atmosphere.
Well, the big election. We got one more news before the election, right? I think the election will be, yeah. So I'm glad that that's all going to be over, but we are in like the craziest part of it, the maximum insanity of elections right now. And it's really getting wild.
Herschel Walker plans to hand out fake police badges and highlight support for police.
It feels like, like the little Deltas thing that you got when you got to talk to the captain when you were a kid at an airport.
Now, his version is not that. That is, in fact, a legitimate sheriff's badge given to him by this very strapping young gentleman here who's a sheriff. But because he used it at a debate and he's become famous for it or infamous for it, he's now ordered thousands to give out. Now, from what I've learned about cops from watching a lot of those police chase videos, they are very, very intolerant of anybody pretending to be a cop. Seems like this might create opportunities for that. And there is a personality that can't help but pretend to be a cop. I don't know what that is about a person, but they are completely broken. If you do that, you just shouldn't be part of the world.
The cops are really going to hate Halloween, especially with how popular Paw Patrol is.
I don't get why this is a thing.
What, fake badges?
No, like the whole thing that precipitated that.
So his argument is the other guy was I think that was one of those defund the police type guys.
Oh.
So he's saying that I support law enforcement. Look at this badge. But this guy doesn't. He hates cops. I think that's the argument. And this is terrifying, I guess, if you have kids.
Kids do not listen. East Chicago teacher charged after having alleged kill list. Well, I'd heard that it was hard to hire teachers.
Indeed.
Apparently ones that are not unhinged.
So some fifth graders
Well, that explains it.
pointed out, hey, Mrs. Whatever, what was her name? Torres, I think, told me that she was going to kill me. And actually, she had a list. And although I was at the bottom of it, I was still on it. So I needed to watch myself. And they came and talked to her. And she was like, well, of course I told him that. He wasn't listening. And by the way, I'm thinking of killing myself as well.
Whoa.
Which, in the teaching profession, don't say that. Actually, do. If you feel that way, do say that.
Get some help, I guess, but
She was let go from her teaching position.
And
hopefully connected
yeah.
with someone who can help her with whatever mental issue she has.
I think she was arrested.
Oh, and the cops are really good at handling mental illness, so that'll go well for her.
That's still better than her just running around with a list.
That's true.
As we talked about, rent skyrocketing. And that's going to put it out of the reach of certain people. Certainly if they're increasing your rent by double digits every month, at some point, you got to leave, right? But this woman was not having it.
Massachusetts woman charged with sending bee swarm on deputies at eviction. So apparently she just rolled up in like an SUV with bees.
It was a trailer, a bee trailer.
Yeah.
And then she had a bee suit on, conveniently enough. So she opened them up and started banging on them. And sure enough, they attacked the deputies.
Wow.
Although I think they overestimated exactly how much damage was done. I think it was only like 5 stings. But they did say that some of those deputies were allergic. And yet nothing bad happened to them.
Yeah.
I think that might be a lie.
Or they might just swolled up a little bit.
Now, this is in Dublin. I'm going to assume it's Ireland, but I've been burned by that before. Apparently, there's a Dublin, Australia that it's also, but I'm pretty sure this is in Ireland. And it has to do with their roving teenage gangs.
City Center Bridge could be lifted each night to stop daily gang fights. Apparently, they go across the bridge and have a fight on the bridge.
They meet up on the bridge. You know, I guess that's like good. Like, you can't dodge to the side. You really have to go head to head there. The other thing they brought up here is apparently these kids fight with fireworks. And so all the people that live in those houses over there can't watch TV at night because it's just the
I'm
melee.
assuming like Roman candles. My husband said that when he was a kid, they used to like,
Yeah. I did that as a kid. And the big problem with that, it usually wouldn't hurt you. But if you got tagged with one of them, it would leave a burn mark on your clothing.
Ooh.
And the parents were not
happy about that.
But yeah, I can definitely see like, you know, hey, I just want to cross this bridge. And
I'm just trying to get home from the shops and
teens are throwing explosives at one another. So I guess so. They also had a great story about that bridge. At some point, there was like a garage remote that brings it up and down. They lost it. It took them a while to get a new one. I missed this. I didn't read this one for some reason. I must have skipped over it.
It was a domestic dispute.
It's not much more than the headline, I guess.
Servers dressed as Power Rangers at Oakland restaurant save woman being attacked. So it was a domestic dispute between a husband and a wife, and she fled in there, and then the husband came in and made a mess, and the servers were just, okay, we're not going to deal with this.
My favorite part of that though is that there's footage in this article of like the servers jumping around in their costumes, and it's like someone had to sit and record that for an afternoon.
I hope that like as they were confronting him, they did the Power Ranger thing where they were like posing and you know, like doing all the things and everything.
His husband's just confused the whole time.
I would be very confused if I was, although if I was already in a rage like that, I'd probably just go for it, right? Although 5 Power Rangers, you're never going to win against 5 Power Rangers. I mean, come on.
I don't know if I could win against one.
I think you could probably.
The something about the kitchen staff got involved too, so they just showed up from the back and it was like, what's going on?
Chris, I think you could give the Pink Ranger a run for money. Yeah. Yellow Ranger would whip your ass. And this is a dark, dark story. Now you never know how much is propaganda coming out, but they seem like they have the facts on this one. And
Yeah, I've seen this.
I don't know. This may not have been a command that came down from the top. This could just be soldiers exercising their rape and pillage privileges, but still terrible.
The Guardian reports that Russian troops killed a Ukrainian musician for refusing a role in a Kherson
I read it as Kherson.
concert. So apparently the Russians wanted to have a concert to say, oh, life is back to normal. And this is a world famous composer. And he's just like, no, I'm not going to participate. He was shot.
Wow.
He'd also been posting on social media stuff very critical of the Russians. Obviously, they were invading his home. And I think that probably had more to do with it than the refusal. I think that might have just been an excuse. Last week, we learned that the Fat Bear contest has concluded, but there was a lot of controversy and a lot of vote stuffing. And you have to ask yourself, who is trying to change the outcome of the Fat Bear contest? Apparently the same people who were trying to change the Bird of the Year contest in New Zealand.
New Zealand Bird of the Year contest bars world's fattest parrot from running.
Let's scroll down so we can get a better picture of him.
I don't know that they gave us too many pictures of him. No.
That's just the one? He doesn't look that fat. But to be fair, I'm also not good at gauging how fat birds are.
It wasn't about his fatness, I don't think. It's just that he's won 2 times in the past. And they're like, oh, no, it's not fair. We need to give some of the other birds a chance. Like, that kind of makes sense if it were a kindergarten pageant. The birds don't know. They don't know that they're not winning. They
But
don't
the
care.
owners really care. And that's what matters. The people who are funding the bird contest.
I don't know. How do you pronounce the A with the squiggle over it?
It depends on the language.
Is that Kakapo?
I'm
Kakapa?
not sure.
Poor guy. Anyway, he won't win this year, even though he probably deserves it.
He knows he's the king in our hearts.
And as always, when you're dealing with the cops, you have to remember that they will shoot you at the drop of a hat. And one offense that could get you shot, shooting yourself.
Woman at Billings Clinic shot herself before she was shot by officer. Because, you know, we needed that kind of a distraction. It's like, well, he shot her. It's like, well, she shot herself first. It's like, what? That doesn't matter.
You still discharged a firearm at someone.
In a hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a hospital.
Yeah. Why is that the headline? It's like, it doesn't make it okay.
I imagine that there is, you know, I mean, the amount of adrenaline in that situation, and you're holding the gun and you're waiting and you hear the shot. It's understandable on some level, but you got to be better than that if you're going to carry it.
I feel like if you're going to be a cop too.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
you have a lot of responsibility.
Unfortunately,
You can't handle it.
I don't think that we're hiring those kinds of people.
Mm.
I saw the headline. I was like, that's saying there's got to be more to this. And then I read it. There is nothing more to it. Why are we doing this?
Blind Arizona woman to pilot plane across the country. We don't have any limits. She can see a little bit.
Oh.
3 inches in front of her face.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't think that is the visibility you need to pilot a plane.
Well, she's learning the instrumentation and everything else, so that's
So
good.
this was crazy. She got the inside of a plane and made a cardboard cutout of the whole thing, and then brailled the entire thing, and sat in her home and learned all the instrumentation like that. It's impressive. Why not just let her have a flight sim?
I'd be a little afraid once she actually had to land it.
She does have a dude with her. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah. If it's a PR stunt, who benefits?
Maybe she just really wants to fly. I guess.
I would
Maybe
like
is
to,
that supposed to be like a feel good? Maybe it's just a feel good story.
but somebody's paying for this, right? Maybe she is.
Maybe she
that's
is,
the whole
yeah.
thing. Yeah, maybe the flight
That's just
instructor.
something she really wants to do, and she's found a way to make it happen. That's
There's
a feel good story.
There's a flight school, and they're like, man, attendance is down. What are we going to do here?
Let's take out some Braille ads.
And we have some more and more. We got the sort of fringe political candidates. I think Donald Trump has really unleashed a tidal wave of
Yeah.
non-standard politicians. You got to try to make your mark. This guy had a very novel way.
Manhattan congressional candidate publishes a porn video to highlight his sex-positive platform. He's probably not going to win. But,
No.
But he's like, we really probably should legalize sex work.
He's also in his 50s, and that girl is 30-something at most, right? And I don't think that's the way that you get votes. Although maybe they said it was almost Jerry Nadler was going to, destroy him. There was no way he could win, so maybe he just wanted to do this. I imagine he paid her.
Or the people who donated to his campaign paid her.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
What if that was campaign money?
Probably was.
Oh my God. If we set a precedent, you can spend campaign money on prostitutes, basically, as long as you film it. That's going to change
It's marketing money. Unreal.
Onlypoliticians.com.
They are bought and sold.
We used to do a lot of stories about people taking weird things on planes as emotional support animals. It never got this crazy, but this was the joke that a lot of people was like, oh, is that going to be what's next? Yeah, apparently it is.
He makes me feel loved. Pennsylvania man's... Oh. What's happening?
Sorry.
Pennsylvania man's alligator becomes emotional support animal.
So this alligator, there's a law in Florida that
Of course it's Florida.
if you can't find, or if you find a wild alligator and try to rescue it, you're not allowed to put it back out in the wild, because they're like, no, we don't want those. And so they're like, well, we're going to have to kill it or you're going to have to keep it. So he was like, oh, I guess I'm going to keep it.
There's a clip in this video where he's just feeding it Cheetos in a pond in his RV.
Cheetos and chicken parts are all that it eats.
That's the most Florida thing. You have a giant pond in your RV and you keep an alligator in it and you feed it cheesy doodles.
And well, there he is.
He's got a dog harness on.
This guy claims is like, yeah, I've never been around. He's been around a lot of alligators. And he's like, I've never been around one that didn't just try to kill you immediately, except this one.
Look at him.
Something about this guy. He says he can put his hand in its mouth and it just won't do anything. He can grab its tongue. It doesn't care.
Yeah, let's hope that continues. Maybe because he knows he's getting feed cheesy doodles.
That would be the end of his Cheetos if he attacked.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he understands that. He's patting it. I can't.
Oh, he gave it a kiss on the forehead.
What an adorable boy.
Yeah. Yeah, so Florida, the top Florida stories.
What do you think it costs to keep an alligator that size in chicken and Cheetos? It's got to be like $30-40 a day, right?
I would
Does
think.
it eat that much?
Maybe because it's cold blooded, it eats once and then like days pass before it needs to go. Well, this is interesting because I did not realize that McDonald's had this technology. And this is in the UK, so maybe it's different over there. They got less land. I guess they have to be more careful about their parking.
McDonald's customer fined after visiting restaurant twice in 14 hours. So the camera thing made them think that his car was there for 14 hours, but he thinks that it was because he went and then his wife went when she went to work.
Which is also
14 hours later.
it's also a little bit embarrassing that you hit the Golden Arches twice in one day.
Yeah.
Come on, make some better choices, man. But I guess they're trying to stop people from parking there all day long.
Yeah.
Weird.
I added this one because it's funny.
Yeah, and
Oh, it's kind of sad.
but I was reading this and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's like Uyghur slaves or
Yeah.
like the cat food slaves or whatever. No, this is in Alabama.
Yeah.
It's here in the U.S.
Korean auto giant Hyundai investigating child labor in its U.S. supply chain.
So it's in Alabama, and I think the youngest was like 12 years old and was like operating a forklift or something.
I think they were like cutting sheet metal or something.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good summer job.
Well, was it Wisconsin that lowered the minimum working age to like 14? I mean, we're kind of already there.
You got to think that's coming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
because they're so desperate for workers who
With
will work
the-
for nothing.
Yeah, with the economic collapse, maybe the chimney sweep type thing will come back.
That's sad.
And Aldi is looking to be, I guess, the first big grocery chain to make us eat the bugs.
Edible insects that started in a garage as experiments may be sold at Aldi. So apparently they put on a presentation for Aldi, and the people at Aldi were really impressed. So Aldi's like, we might carry this.
I mean, I've seen novelty bugs before. I think someone sent us some once
Yep.
where it's like novelty snacks, but it's interesting that Aldi would carry them.
And these two guys have started a company, Yum Bug. They look like a couple of bug eaters. We'll
What
see
a weird insult.
We'll see if it catches on. Here's the problem, though. I know we were talking about this earlier. I've been reading a lot about ultra processed foods.
Yeah.
Right on.
Wouldn't most bugs end up ultra processed?
They probably have to be, I would think.
We need to research, studies.
So I'm sorry. Are these bugs unprocessed, free range bugs?
Did you go out into a field and pick them up?
I get the feeling that like the grasshoppers are basically that. Those are basically not processed.
But they're farm raised, right?
Yeah.
They're not wild grasshoppers.
They're not just running out into a field full of goldenrod and picking the grasshoppers.
No, because they might have those scary pathogens.
Yeah, I got to think the only way the average person is going to stomach eating bugs is if it's, nugget form or whatever.
Yeah.
Really just
You can't tell.
broken down. Plus, don't you have to get the chitin out of it? Because we can't digest that.
I don't know. Whenever I've watched Survivor Man eat bugs, he just usually like skewers them, puts them over a fire, and then he just eats them real fast.
I guess chitin would be great fiber, though, right?
Yeah.
Like really scrape you out in there. Going through there. And this is, it's one of those like someone didn't get the irony at all.
Yeah.
She doubled down on her Karen-ness.
Can I speak to the manager? City takes down Karen-themed Halloween display after complaints. Oh,
Is it complaints or complaint? Singular.
She probably got her Facebook group friends
Yeah.
to write angry
It's like, yeah, an
letters.
HOA.
It was really poorly done. It looks terrible.
which I think is another reason it should have stayed up because it's obviously not meant to be one.
It's satire, yeah.
If you like from the internet, you would not recognize who that was supposed to be, but clearly, whoever it was supposed to be knew that it was them.
Well, they got Karen's garden. I mean, it's an archetype. It's not. Do you think it was about one particular person?
That'd be hilarious if it
It
was.
That would be great.
Because otherwise, why isn't it? I mean, why wouldn't this be permitted?
You do have to feel for women who were named Karen, 40
Yeah.
years ago. They didn't know. You think this is too hot?
Yeah, this is too hot.
Leave that alone.
Yep,
It's
we'll leave
just
that
the
one
one.
alone.
Oh, it will be in the one tab though. So if you're curious, last story in the one tab.
All right. Happy Halloween, everybody. Enjoy your weekend festivities.
Save the scariest story for last.
All right. Bye.